Yeah, it's on my screen.
Yes, I can see that.
Cool. Right, we'll get cracking then. With the three of us, I'll actually want this to be a bit more just a bit of an open dialogue, really. So we'll chat through and I'll present some stuff. So I guess a little bit about first of all, has anyone ever heard of Boing before?
No.
No.
Excellent. Thanks. Cool. So I'll give you where we are, where we started, and what we're doing now. So I'm a senior lecturer at university. I work at Oxford Brookes, and we teach sport coaching and physical education. And about 6-7 years ago, we started a project called Boing, and we wanted to look at a different way of teaching primary PE, and we wanted to create a play-based curriculum that provided student learners or pupils, young people, with fun and engaging environments to learn through. And there's a bit of science behind how we've designed them. So we then create a curriculum that's free. So we're not really selling it. We just want as many people to use it as possible. And the website at the top is where you can access, and you can go and use, I think, within the PE curriculum, there's 130 PE games. And within sort of the new Boing 3.0, there's 30 games, and we've divided them up into games for big spaces, games for lots of people, games for small spaces, and things like that to help teachers sort of navigate it a little bit. So first and foremost, if you leave here today and go and play some Boing games with your children and young people that you teach, I think we've had a huge success. Even better, if you go and show other people and go, oh, I've seen this Boing thing, you might want to have a look. That would be wicked for us as well. You're probably wondering how we even pay for it. So we're funded by Sport England. So we're a community interest company, and we got a grant from Sport England to train teachers and coaches in how to use Boing and share Boing. So yeah, and then the other part of the project is it's a research project. So we're looking at the impact of a play-based curriculum on children learning development, and all things in between. We do offer some training courses, which you can kind of access and jump on. They're £10 booking fee to jump on if teachers or parents want to jump on, or we can do one for your school as well if you want to have a chat with us. So that one is a plug. But Sport England are kind of funding those courses. We just put a £10 booking fee to make sure people turn up when they book, really. And then we're working with a few businesses to do good in the world. In and around their other money-making schemes, they try and do something within their community, so we're helping those guys. So yeah, I hope that gives you a bit of a background about what we are as a company and where we're trying to go. There's 6 or 7 of us that work, and most of us, well, all of us have got actual jobs, and this is just something we do on the side because we love it and we really feel passionate about it. So yeah, thanks for jumping on today, and if I can convert 2 more people to go out and use Boing, I'm happy. So I guess normally, when we run these courses, we would jump straight in Boing philosophy and play one of the games. Tricky online for me to manage that. So what I have done is cut a video of some not so young people playing one of our games, and I was going to talk you through what the game is and what it looks like. So if I just play this, it's only very short, but you might get the idea from here.
They don't have to move now. So you've got to land on the same spot to move, yeah. You've got to drop it. Yeah, you've got to drop it and go back. So if you get caught with a beanbag, you've got to drop the beanbag and go back.
Cool. That should give us an idea of what a Boing game looks like, and I'll talk you through a little bit how we designed that, and I guess we'll talk about why and the science behind it, behind the game design. So I guess my first question is, pick 3 words to describe what you just watched and what you saw. So if you guys could unmute yourself and give me your initial response to what you saw and how you would describe that.
So can I just check? They had to move to a different spot on the back of the drum?
Yes.
Okay.
Fun.
Yeah, it looked like fun. They were all laughing, which is good.
Yeah, so go for it. Cool, I'll go. The beauty of online stuff. So yeah, a lot of the words we get back are: it looks fun, it looks engaging, it looks chaotic, it looks messy, it looks exciting, engaging. So like the first point of every single game we designed was, could we design a game that looks interesting, feels interesting, and can engage people in physical activity? So colors, fun, chaos, mess was all a huge part of the game design that we created. So that game works well because we've obviously got a ton of spots out on the hall, and a beat of the drum, which adds a real interesting control mechanism to an invasion game, which stops the bigger, faster, stronger children from dominating and taking over, really, because they're slowed down by the beat, which really helps. It also slows down the whole plotting my route, where's the space, where's the defender, how do I avoid them, because they've got to move on the beat, which gives them a bit more time, which really helps. And then we've sort of designed the game where one team are at one end and they've got to go to the other end, get some beanbags and get back the other way, and then the other team are doing the opposite, and all that happens is they move the beanbags around the hall and continuously carry on. And then we'll put some, it's actually called Bears in the Wood, and we like to immerse them in kind of real world play and sort of sell the whole wood and the bears and the hunters to really engage them in something that's fun, but also has a sort of some learning things built into it. So my kind of next question for you guys is, like, what do you think children will be learning and developing through playing that game?
Awareness of space and finding a space.
Yeah, that's a cool one for us. Anything else?
So I can't hear you very well. I'm just going to try and connect using a different computer. I'll be back in hopefully 1 minute.
Okay, Rob should be able to let you back in.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries.
Cool. So yeah, I'll kind of tick on. Otherwise, we could be a while. So there's definitely like a strategy, thinking, problem solving, awareness of space element to it for sure. The other one is there's a physical element. So hopping, landing, balancing, jumping are kind of all built into the game. Interesting, by controlling the beat of the drum, you actually control the movement that the learners do. By speeding it up, we actually shift to bounding, hopping, and faster movements. If we slow the drum down, we get back to landing, sticking, holding. So there's a whole lot of physical development hidden within the game. Not hidden, I guess, but not explicit. So they're focusing on solving the problem of getting a beanbag from one end and back to the other. There just happens to be a load of movement development built into it. We would then develop the game and give them a bib to hold between two, and then they start to have to collaborate and move together on the beat, which really stretches them. So there's definitely like some social development, some collaboration built into all our games as well, and a psychological element of problem solving. So we kind of trying to look at, you'll hear the word holistic approach to physical education. In our view, we don't want to sort of do some hopping separately and then do some psychological separately and then do some social separately. We want to build everything into one environment and game that they develop and learn through. So each of our games we sort of view as a piece of Play-Doh, which is our analogy, and we can then mold and shape the game around the learners. So we actually at points we'll put some safe zones in and allow people to safety. We'll ask them to redesign the floor plan to provide different routes, and they're always way more inventive than we are when they do that. We'll ask the learners to add any rules or change the game. So the idea of Boing was to provide 120 game bases, if you like, and basic games to play, and then through the teacher and the learners develop them and play within them. So yeah, it is proper cool. The engagement of children in the game is brilliant. I guess my next question, which you can see on the screen, is, having looked at this, do you look at it and go, wow, that's awesome, I can't wait to play it? Or do you look at it and go, I'm not sure, I have these questions or sort of concerns or challenges? What's your initial emotional response to a game like that?
I'm currently doing netball at the moment, and I think I'm really looking forward to doing that game next week. Apart from, I'm not sure I've got the spots. You need spots, I guess. I don't know what we do if you didn't have the spots on the ground. I think yeah, the idea of moving around and awareness of others, often in a game, they all kind of clump together and don't use the whole space. So I think I'm really looking forward to doing an activity like that.
Yeah, so on the website, we've sort of got games for minimal equipment and games for big groups as well. So the spots are pretty much one of the biggest bits of kit we use. But if you don't have them, there are games, different games on there that you could play that don't have them. So yeah, just an example. But I think I definitely would have invested in the spot making company if I had known this 5 or 6 years ago. That they're the go-to item. And then the other one is around inclusivity is pretty huge for us. So whenever we play netball in its fullest form or football in its fullest form, there tends to be one ball, which tends to get colonized by the bigger, faster, stronger children. It's less so in netball because you can't run with it, but definitely in football and rugby and hockey. And because those bigger, faster, stronger, and sometimes not that, but just more confident children sort of possess the ball, they get better and better, and those on the outside of the game get further and further away. And actually, if you say, oh, today, class, we're going to play football, I suspect the response you get is half of them going, yes, this is the best day ever, and the other half going, I hate football. I'm aware you can deliver netball and football in a really inclusive way with lots of balls and different. There are some very skillful educators out there. We wanted to steer clear of traditional games and actually provide 120 games that they've never played before, because they've never played Bears in the Wood, and actually they don't know if they're good at it or not. It's just a new problem for them to solve. The other kind of point was we wanted to make the games what we call low floor, high ceiling. So really wide access, which allows children to enter into the game in the environment at their own speed and pace. Really interestingly, the children tend to migrate to playing with and against people around the same level. And you can see multiple games happening within the game. And there's multiple beanbags and multiple spots. And actually, it looks like chaos from the outside, but if you video it from above, it's really interesting, the pattern forming, if you're geeky like me, the pattern forming that children do in the game as they organize and solve the problem. So yeah, that's just a little bit about, I guess, the game and what one would look like and how we would play it. The key behind it all is this concept of physical literacy. So is this something you've heard of before? If I said to you physical literacy, what does it mean to you guys? Do you have a definition you'd use?
I don't know if you're there for the opening of the conference, but there was a great video of adults who perhaps didn't have physical literacy, because like throwing keys and then ducking, and so I feel like my understanding of it, and I might be wrong, is just general ability to move around and those sort of key skills like throwing and catching and I can't remember what other things were in the video, but Suzanne, I don't know if you watched that video. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, so basic fundamentals, like you said, building their physical abilities, gross motor skills, more fine motor skills, and confidence. Yeah,
so we have that's part of it for us, but we have a slightly different approach, which is going to sound fluffy, but bear with me, I'm an academic. So physical literacy for us is the confidence or the output is someone who's more confident, more motivated, has a greater understanding of their body and how they solve physical problems, and therefore is more likely to be physically active. So if Dorothy or Dave is more confident and motivated and understands their body, they are more likely to go to an aerobics class, to play with their children, to walk up that mountain, whatever the physical activity output is. It might be sport, but for most people it's not. If I don't feel confident and motivated and don't have an awareness of my body, I'm less likely to be physically active. And that kind of spirals then. If we're more physically active, we actually develop more physical skills and competencies, which almost spirals us again to be more confident and motivated. So there's like a bit of a ignition somewhere that we miss. It's really interesting. Like we would define physical literacy as an improved embodied awareness and understanding, which is academic fluff for I know how my body, I understand how my body solves a problem. So we would use the phrase, it's not how far you can jump, it's understanding how far you can jump, and therefore whether you can jump over this gap or not. So you could have two people next to each other, one who can physically jump further, but actually could be less physically literate because they're not aware, they have no understanding of their body and how far they can jump, so they over or underestimate that. So a game, we use the analogy, two people walk up to a ravine, one of them is in a wheelchair, and the other one's not and can walk. The person in the wheelchair looks at the ravine and goes, that's too steep for me, I can't go down and back up it, I'm going to go round and use the bridge. The more able-bodied, or the person who can walk, goes into the ravine and up the other side, and they meet round. They're both physically literate. They've just solved the problem by understanding their own body. So I think our job in PE is to develop awareness and understanding of our body and how we solve problems, not competence, which I think is the bit that people have lost. And then everything else is around the more holistic approach of, it's not just the movement bit or the hopping bit, it's the social bit, it's the interaction bit that we miss. So yeah, measuring it, measuring embodied understanding and awareness of how I solve problems is pretty much impossible, or that's what we're finding. Confidence and motivation we can kind of measure, but it's easier to measure the physical bit because we can measure how far people can jump, throw a catch, and those types of things. So yeah, we feel like it's a slightly more holistic view of physical literacy that's not just confidence, I guess is the bit I'm trying to explain. And it's important for us because people will be more confident, creative and fluent and more active. And the way we develop that is by experience, experiment and problem solve. So by putting all the spots out at different distances and away from each other, what we're hoping is that children start to learn which spots I can jump to and from through the process of trial and error. How far can I hop, and therefore which gaps are accessible to me in order to solve the problem. And then when I'm moving with someone, how do we then do that as well? The best thing I've heard from the Boing game is, what did you learn today? And someone went, oh, I've learned to share. I was like, wow, that's so cool. So does that kind of make sense in terms of physical literacy from our standpoint? Or does that sound really academic and fluffy and waffly, or both?
No, I understand it. It's good.
Cool. So we kind of shifted physical literacy into 5 areas, and those sort of crossover. They do all cross over into sport. That links all of our games into this game would really be really good to help people play netball or whatever. So we have kind of done a mapping exercise across from our curriculum into something that's a bit more traditional. And then within schools, some go fully Boing and fully all in. We're doing Boing every day of the week, every lunchtime, every after school. Others go, we're going to do a bit of Boing and a bit of traditional games. Others have gone, early years and then the early end of school, we're going to do a lot of Boing, and then we're going to slowly shift it up to the other end. So we very much position Boing as, here's something you can use in your lessons, for your lessons, some lessons. That bit's definitely entirely up to you guys to see how it fits with your school and your philosophy. the biggest thing we felt when we went around schools was teachers were like, I just don't have time to design games and really think about it, so I just produce what I've always done. So we've gone, okay, here's 120 games you can play. So I've talked a bit about physical literacy, and we've kind of popped through that. So we kind of have then a teaching approach, I guess, which I don't think's any different to any other lessons that the expert primary teachers tend to follow. But it'd be interesting to get your take on which words on the board in front of you do you think fit with Boing, and which ones do you think don't? And there's definitely some low-hanging fruit out there. This is definitely one we do with a big group and everyone shouts out and we create a game out of it. But online, I was struggling to think how we would do that.
So physical literacy is Boing and learner-centered is Boing.
Yeah.
You mentioned managed chaos, so I guess that's Boing.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I'll let someone else have a go.
I can't quite hear what you were saying then, Sophie, but is it a high time on the task so everyone's involved rather than just a few people taking part at any one time?
That's a huge part for us, yeah. Learning through play. The more time we're playing, the more time we're learning. So actually, the skill is reducing the downtime as much as possible and doing much more of the support and scaffolding while the game's happening with individuals. And I'll get into how we do that a little bit later. But yeah, high time on tasks, definitely. Physical literacy, definitely. Managed chaos we had, and then learner centered. Yeah, all very boingy, which is great. Anything else that we think is boingy on that list?
Play.
Yeah, huge. Play.
Sorry. So have we had a learner centered or not?
Yeah. So play learner centered.
Fundamental movement skills.
Oh, that's the sneaky trick.
Have I fallen down a trap?
Yeah, you've fallen into my trap. Yeah, there are some curriculum around that kind of really based on fundamental movement skills and building foundational movement skills. It's not that we don't think that's important. We just have sort of tried to hide them within the games, so they're not at the forefront. And trying to develop them as they're developing the decision making and problem solving and psychological and social skills, as well as the movement. I think a lot of the time previously it's sort of, right, we're going to do some movement bits, like hop, land, skip, blah, 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 and then we're going to put them into a game. So yeah, it's probably one that's slightly on the fence. So I will give you a sort of an amber flag for it. But yeah, it's definitely one we want to avoid being the focus solely for our curriculum. How do you guys feel about competition? What do you reckon, boingy or not so boingy?
I think there is an element of competition, isn't there?
Yeah, so this is the one also that we sort of deliberately put our way around it, is competition with a small c. And we would, in order for the games to work, a lot of them are competitive in nature within the game, because that drives the behavior and the development. And if I'm evading someone, then there's got to be some kind of defender, which inherently is competitive. I guess our point is we're trying to avoid winners, losers, outs, scores, other than how many did you get that time? Oh, cool. How many can we get this time? That's competitive in one sense. So yeah, managing competition, because some of the children are incredibly competitive. When we do this with teachers, actually at schools, it gets very heated. and sort of gets competitive. So we have to understand that drives the behaviour, but we try and avoid it being the be all and end all of it. And I think sport is something we avoid because that tends to lend itself to competition scoring leagues, as opposed to something that's a bit more inclusive. So that's our waffly answer around competition. What do you reckon? Implicit learning outcomes or explicit learning outcomes?
I'd say implicit is boingy, maybe.
Yeah, very much so. So we kind of have these looking like a children's party game from the outside, and ensure the teacher is really aware of what the specific learning outcomes are through the game. But we're kind of avoiding explicit learning outcomes because the research sort of shows us that they reduce the search strategies and the options of the children within it. They don't tend to explore other things beyond the explicit learning outcome. So it kind of narrows their focus too much for us. So it does create some issues when every child turns around and says they've learned something different from the game. But we kind of thought that was the trade-off we were happy with already. So yeah, explicit to the teacher, implicit to the learners is how we present it. I don't think there's anything else too much here. Challenge and collaboration is hugely boingy, and kind of a huge driver is around not necessarily becoming an expert at bears in the wood, but becoming an expert at solving a problem physically. And then each week is a new problem. So actually what I learn is the ability to solve physical problems as opposed to play a certain game. So it's a bit like, I guess, the musical instrument or the language analogy around, I get really good at learning languages, so I start to pick up languages quicker. And there's some crossover and transfer there. So that's why the curriculum is quite varied and huge, and the games are all different, because it's not the game we're after them getting better at, like netball. It's the skill of learning a new game. We think then when they go into different physical contexts, whether that's competitive or not, they'll be able to pick it up and solve it quicker, is the theory that we're testing. Cool. And then I think we've covered most things on there that's not pretty obvious. We would look at really praising effort, not ability. But that's not a hard and fast rule, but just the way we would lean. We would look at questions rather than telling where possible, and sort of creative solutions rather than rigid fixed answers from there. Cool. So that's our kind of philosophy. Therefore, high quality Boing for us.
Sorry, Danny, just before you carry on to the next slide, I haven't managed to get someone to go and pick up my daughter. So in the next 5 or 6 minutes, I've tried to do it on my phone, but at the moment it's not working very well. But I may try and connect using my phone. Otherwise, I'm going to have to leave the meeting, I'm afraid.
No problem at all. Yeah.
I'll be here as long as I can.
Yeah. Good luck when you jump off. But yeah, nice to meet you. I'm going to keep going. But yeah, no problem at all. Thanks for letting me know. So high quality Boing looks for us like fun and active play, collaborative challenges, and inclusive learning environments that are child-centered, non-linear, and problem-based. So I think when we go into schools, they see these things and either go, yes, this is absolutely in line with our school philosophy around learning and pedagogy. This is great, or they're a little bit uncomfortable and it looks a bit chaotic for them. So, and we kind of don't mind that we're a little bit Marmite from the outside. So that's us. And then we created these sort of 6 C's on the left as you look at the screen, as the things we want to see when children are doing our Boing games. So captivated and smiling is huge. When I sort of ever lose faith in our Boing journey, I always sort of, whenever you see children playing within the games, you just sort of, it kind of rekindles that for us. So yeah, just seeing engaged, captivated and smiling children is really just empowering for us. Seeing challenging problems and children solving them, constant play rather than people stood still, and collaboration and working together and teamwork. So not just understanding how I solve a problem, but how we solve a problem together. Creative decisions and imaginative solutions, and the last one, which we've shoehorned into being a C, is celebrating being unique and kind, which we think is a huge focus for Boing. So we just want people to leave their PE lessons going, I love that. I loved doing PE today, and then not when they're older asked, why didn't you do any physical activity? Oh, I hated PE. PE was horrible. I just think we need to get around that. And we were, as academics for ages, sort of criticizing PE, and someone said, oh, why don't you try and do something about it? So we did. And then teaching Boing is about being child-centered, not teacher-led, setting problems, promoting creativity, focus on collaboration, and ask questions and explore children's movements from there. And then the what, how, and the why of Boing is sort of creating fun learning spaces and providing positive experiences and giving children a chance to understand their physical literacies. How, we'll let them be kids, engage them in real world play and worlds that they get exploring in and sort of immersed in. Focus on awareness and not proficiency, and focus on holistic development of the whole child. Why? Because we want healthier, more active children. We want more confident children, and we want children who can move around and impact the world in a really positive way. So yeah, that's our what, how, and why. Boing. A Boing lesson is for us is no different to any lesson that teachers run, as in it has a start, a middle, and the end, and it has some tasks, and it has some encouragement and engagement in that task, and then there might be, based on how they're getting on, another task, or a task that's made easier or harder, some scaffolding for solving the problem, and then some plenary and some reflection and unpicking at the end. So we kind of see this as like any other lesson that a teacher runs, and we kind of want to move PE back to the teachers, as you're the experts in education and learning, and away from lots of external providers, because we feel like they don't know the children as well. It's a real missed opportunity to engage with the children in a different way. We're just passing the children off to a PE provider to do that. So yeah, that's a bit of a mission of ours as well. And just a tiny bit on the theory. So, and this is kind of where my PhD kicks in, really, around basically viewing learners as a non-linear dynamical system adapting an ever-changing ecosystem, which is absolute academic waffle for providing an environment for children to adapt and learn within. And all this theory is taken from like ecosystems, where if the environment changes, all the species and elements of the ecosystem will then co-adapt and solve that problem. And as one species adapts, so does the others. And we've designed the games to be basically 120 ecosystems that the children will learn and adapt within. And the lovely phrase that you cannot adapt to an environment you don't inhabit. So we would never realize our ability to swim if we weren't given the opportunity to interact with water. We could understand swimming and the concept of swimming, but we never would be able to adapt to that environment unless we were immersed in it. And Cornwall's a lovely example of how the physical environment shapes the physical development of the children in and around it with the sea and the outdoor lifestyle. So yeah, it's kind of built on some theory that suggests that we need to just immerse children in these environments. They will adapt and problem solve and pattern form, rather than being provided with a set of skills to repeat and then try and put into an environment. And then just a little bit about the Playtank, which is our space where all the games are, and where you can access them. So we've split them up into sort of 12 different blocks. Each block's got 3 weeks in it, or 3 games, sorry, that we can play. And you could see sort of the ones around angles and surfaces, another one around object control. There's a few around sort of rhythm and emotion. So, and then in each block there are 3 levels. So we've sort of split it into some sort of early years 1, 2, years 3 and 4, and years 5 and 6. And the games are sort of more complex as you sort of select the year or the age and stage, but that's not prescriptive as well. You might find your year 2s can do a level 3 game, not a problem. So yeah, just how we've kind of had to divide the the curriculum up rather than just throwing 120 games at a wall. They have some kind of themes that sit within them, but there's no order or route that you would need to take through them. Pick and choose. In the end, just a little bit around the how it's kind of organised and fits together in terms of stages and physical literacy areas, and then different play blocks and games. And that's one of the ones I'll do. And then I guess way ahead of time is anything from us really. So you can email us, tweet us, call us on the website that I put up earlier. We're happy for any teachers to log on to one of our Play Venture training courses for £10, or if your school was really interested, we come and do some training virtually or face to face, but probably virtually for you guys. And then anyone you could spread the word for Boing to use. And it's just whether you had any questions now. So I'm going to come out of this. Okay. I'm back. Cool. So I should be off the shared screen. Sophie, Rob, any questions from you at this point? Sorry, I'm really quick through that. I think it's because we're with 3 people and there's a lot of me talking and not a lot of you guys doing, which is very not a Boing philosophy. So yeah, any questions, comments?
I guess I just need to. I've got your website up, and I probably just need to go and have a look. I don't know if you've got any more demos of other games, or
on website. Each game's got a video, and it's one of our coaches sort of drawing out the game on a whiteboard, so you can see where it all goes, and then a short clip of the children playing the game within it, and then a series of instructions that tells you how to sort of set it up and play it from there. So we've tried to keep that to a minute long. So that's the best way teachers have found to sometimes with all the will in the world and the time pressures you guys are on, it's like, oh well, what game shall I play today? I'll just tap this video, watch that for 60 seconds. I go, yeah, okay, I can set that up. So yeah, that's the best way I think to get yourself into the games that we've put up. Does that answer your question, Sophie? Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then I guess the other thing is, I was thinking, what kind of key resources would you say you'd need to do Boing well? I mean, obviously the spots is one. Do you have a sort of set of resources that you say these are really great for doing Boing?
Yeah, yeah. We and have tried Boing around the traditional equipment that we would normally find in a PE cupboard. Other than the spot, it's hula hoops, bean bags, balls, few bibs, maybe a few bats and the odd tennis racket, but that's pretty much the core equipment you would need and want to use to design it to do the games really. When we originally wrote it, I think one of our coaches who's got a bit of OCD would write 137 bean bags and 36 hula hoops. They're just a guide, so if you've got less, then it's cool. You can just sort of adapt it as you go. But yeah, no special equipment. The spots are so useful for marking areas and for managing their routes through them. That's one thing I would say. I would suggest getting a hold of if you were going to really embrace this.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry. I just mute myself in between because I think there's a bit of feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate that. I can hear myself 10 seconds later or from yours. Cool. So what, just for me, Sophie, what do you run in terms of PE at the minute at your school? How do you guys format it? I'm always interested to see what approach people take to it.
Well, I'm new to the school and they are using this scheme called Arena. And I guess it is a case of, it is more traditional. So you have a 6-week block and you build your skills around basketball or netball or tag rugby, whatever it is, and then build the skills throughout the sessions. And they're good lessons, they're well planned, but I like the idea of doing. I think that the way I might use Boing is kind of feed in the games within the lessons. I think the tricky thing is obviously it's not happening at the moment, but I do feel this pressure when tournaments, for example, take place, and I've over time I've learnt from previous times going to tournaments, and my class don't really know the rules, and there's another class that turn up and they know all the rules down to a T. Anyway, and I just think there is an element which sometimes you do have to play the traditional game for inter-school competitions.
That's pretty normal for teachers to try and navigate, and it's definitely why a lot of schools will, if they've got 2 PE lessons and they're lucky enough to get through 2, is they'd have a Boing lesson and a games lesson, so they can almost tick both boxes and provide 2 different experiences. But you're right, you can't turn up to a netball game and then no one knows the netball rules. I guess our long-term philosophy is if they do more Boing games, they'll pick them up quicker. But you still got to immerse them in them and explain them to them. So yeah, I mean, I did go and watch a netball game once, and I think the ball just stayed down one end for about 7 minutes because at no point could anyone throw it far enough to come down the other end. And I always think, is the game in its fullest form the best format for really young ones? I think there's something we could do creative about that, but I don't think that's something we can solve through Boing or in a short term. I think there's a cultural thing around playing sporting fixtures, and I think for those who want to and choose to and enjoy it, I think it's brilliant. And you know, I look back to my school experience and I loved it. I guess our point is that's not everyone, and should we be providing something else that engages the entire class as well as the sporting bit as well? That's I guess where we sit with it.
Absolutely, and it was interesting. One of the keynote speakers said, actually, what we want from primary children coming up secondary is just that they have that confidence, physical confidence, and as their foundation to then build in fixtures and things. And it's tricky, isn't it? Because on the one hand, it's good to have inter-school competitions, but that does take away time from a PE lesson, where actually something like Boing that's much more inclusive and gets all the children, as I said, being physically literate, but then at the same time, that's the time to also get them prepared for the tournaments. And obviously, in an ideal world, you do those in after-school clubs, but then those can't happen at the moment. But then the fixtures aren't happening at the moment. So maybe this is the year where Boing can do really well.
Yeah,
we don't really focus on fixtures so much.
It's finding the balance and the philosophy that fits the school as well, and what the you know, you've got to manage the parents and the kids, what they want, and there are some schools that have stopped playing fixtures and just gone all Boing, and you know, they're very rare. I think a more balanced approach is probably where a lot of schools end up, and then like a graded approach through their years. So early years 1 and 2 do a lot more Boing, rather than games, and then switch to more game-based stuff sort of as they get to 4, 5, 6, and play fixtures, which is an interesting one because I actually think that would work, because they would gain the confidence and awareness through Boing to be able to apply into a game once they sort of get a bit older. But we've had secondary schools, years 7 and 8, use it with the groups that aren't really into the sport, and want a more sort of inclusive experience of being physically active, which has been cool.
Yeah, thank you. I think I've never taught Key Stage 1, but I'm looking forward to looking at Boing a bit, but also showing, I think, particularly in Key Stage 1, I imagine there are lots of lovely games when competitive sport isn't so apparent.
Yeah. And if you speak to early years teachers, they're like, oh, this is cool, this is just what we do. So you know, it fits with a lot of early years stuff as well, because it is more unstructured or sort of structured play and exploration in those early years classes. So that's quite cool as well. Cool. Well, and if you've got any further questions, Sophie, I'm happy to sit on and answer them. But if you feel like you want to jump off, then I'm happy to bring it to a close. Is there anything from you, Rob, listening in?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Cool. Well, thanks, Soph, for jumping on. I appreciate it. And thanks for Rob for sticking around and managing my technical background. I think we got there in the end. And I'll leave you guys to have an enjoyable Friday and a lovely weekend.
Thank you very much, Danny. Thank you.
Thanks, Danny.
Cheers, Rob.
Bye. Then. Bye.